Hey everybody, this is Leech. I decided to make a video and talk about an interesting topic in the world of Bleach. First and foremost, the Soul Society. One of the most important things in our time is, of course, money. We're nowhere without it. So why not touch on this topic in Bleach as well? Economists, tax officials, and accountants, feel free to enter the chat. If I say something wrong or inaccurate, correct me in the comments. Well, now let's get to the topic of the video. Kan, ring, is the currency of the Soul Society. It is the currency in which Shinigami wages are paid, and all Soul Society items are purchased with this currency only. The coin has a round shape with a hole in the center, similar to Japanese 5-yen coins, with protrusions on the side of the center hole resembling letters or lines. Initially, I would like to talk about products whose value is already known. We will need this information later on. A standard issue of the Seirite communication costs 380 Kan. The cost of special issues varies, but the special issue featuring the Ryoka invasion costs 680 Kan. Gin Tonbo glasses. The known product lineup of the Gin Tonbo eyewear store costs between 62,800 Kan and 97,300 Kan. Here though, you have to consider that Gin Tonbo products are considered expensive. Calendars featuring Gote 13, Shinigami. The Purgatory Company sells these calendars for 2,415 Kan each, although the one featuring Rangiku Matsumoto costs 3,415 Kan. Anti-hollow training machine. The Purgatory Company sells these, which are essentially punching bags, for 19,800 Kan. Set of weights. The Purgatory Company sells a set of 2 dumbbells for 2,980 Kan. 4th Division nurse outfits. The Purgatory Company sells these, meant for cosplay, for 5,980 Kan. The Shinigami Women's Association has a budget of 250,000 Kan. They also sell their Captain's Photo Collection books for 2,480 Kan each. The Shinigami Men's Association has a budget of 90,000 Kan. Calligraphy Club, Ikebana Club, Tea Ceremony Club. They each have a budget of 150,000 Kan. In Bleach Jet, Kubo also answered some questions about this. I'm interested in the economic activities of the Shinigami. I was wondering if you have any details about what purchases they made after their pay raise and so on. I'd especially like to know how Soifon used her first paycheck. I think her initial salary went to buy something for Yoruichi. After she became a captain, what would her wealth look like as far as human society is concerned? The captain's rooms that are provided are essentially like houses, and the salary itself is also a good income. If we are talking in yen, the initial salary of a captain is around 2 million yen per month. It then increases during each fiscal year, and there is a performance-based incentive system in place. It was noted that Renji also has something of a hobby, collecting high-quality eyeglasses. The impression among the lieutenants is that they don't earn much, but their salaries still start at 700,000 yen per month. Hisagi, for example, takes on duties such as editor-in-chief of Seirite Communication, so he also gets a salary from that. He seems to spend a significant amount of his money on various things. About buying things like guitars, yes. Anyway, when you become captain, you even get an administrative allowance and thus dramatically increase your earnings. Do regular squad members get enough to feed their families? It's difficult because a rookie earns just under 200,000 yen. However, once they start gradually climbing the ranks and earning an officer position, they will be able to afford it. Let's not factor in inflation and all that, and the fact that Bleach Jet came out in 2018. But if you remember that Gin Tonbo's glasses are equal to Renji's half-yearly salary. About the half-yearly salary, that's from Kubo's words from an old 2004 interview in Shonen Jump. And we also know how much the points cost. Tentatively, if Renji always buys the same glasses, 14,117 Kan is the lieutenant's monthly salary, which is about 700,000 yen. But like Kubo said, Hisagi has an editor-in-chief allowance as well. Renji's example is the easiest to calculate, since we have the numbers, and Renji had just become a lieutenant at that point. So the minimum salary of a captain, without any bonuses and raises, that is, the starting salary, is around 40,334 Kan. And a rookie gets about 4,033 Kan. But don't get too seduced by the captain's salary. After all, according to Hitsugaya during the fake Karakura Town arc, after Komamura got into a fight with Chue Neng Pao, all destruction and damage caused by Komamura's division would be paid for by Komamura in his capacity as captain. At least in Matsumoto's case, when she was already daydreaming about her own account, Hitsugaya pulled her out of her reverie and told her that if she caused any damage, she would have to pay for it herself. And that's all well and good, but I'm wondering what the hell those bonuses are. If the captain's starting salary is 2 million yen, and considering the mess their subordinates are making in the world of the living and the Soul Society, when and in what millennium do they plan to pay for all of this? And if they plan to pay for it at all? Well, let's drop that part. You can also remember how the Omeke showed Iba moonlighting at the construction site of Mayuri's Spiritual Particle Research Lab to pay back the money for the Men's Association, even though he didn't know that it wouldn't help in any way to get the money back. Also, Kubo in his club outside, when asked about Shinigami work pay, replied that, in the beginning, the position was without reward. After receiving the substitute badge, it's now come to be that a reward will be deposited within a Seraitai account. Ichigo hasn't been informed though. I can imagine Ichigo going to the Soul Society after his death, and then, in the spirit of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, discovering a bunch of coins in his account. That's what it means to have invested properly in one's future. There's also the possibility of him going to the Maggot's Nest for not paying taxes for all those years. After all, Ichigo hasn't filed a single return with the Soul Society's tax office. They won't see him as a hero for not paying his taxes. Well, in support of that, we can remember that in Chapter 13, Rukia was going to pay Urahara with something interesting, and Urahara mentions the bounty on the Hollow's head. Even though almost all of them were not listed as bounties and were worth 0 per head, only Shrika was valued at 5,000, since this Hollow had eaten 2 Shinigami. However, afterwards, as far as I understand, the bounty system itself seems to be forgotten about, and is not mentioned anywhere else. By the way, Urahara tried to charge 4,980 kan for 255 parts for Rukia's Gigai. Shinigami had another privilege. Lieutenants could take a leave of absence to care for their children. In the Abarai family home, there were always a few babysitters sent by the Kuchiki family, and this lasted until she entered the Shinigami Academy. Lieutenants had a nice parental leave benefit. According to the same club outside, there was also the question of what would happen to the floor of the 9th Division building that Mayuri destroyed with the beam from his eyes in the one-shot chapter. Would Hisagi and Kenshi be paid for the repairs? And it turns out that they actually have a pretty complicated bureaucracy. They'll pass the damage bill to the 12th Division, and if that doesn't work, they'll pass it to the 1st Division. And if that doesn't work either, Hisagi will probably have to pay out of his own pocket. So, that's all well and good, of course, but where does the money come from for the Gotei 13 and the Soul Society in general? To begin with, we should refer to the already known scheme, shown in one of the data books. According to this scheme, the royal family is the most important one, which controls everything. The Soul King is like an emperor, invisible but honored as God, although he is God. Then there's the Central 46. They act as officials here. The Emperor, if I may say so of course, has given them the power to do so. In fact, the Central 46 takes over the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. The noble houses are reminiscent of the oligarchs who brought the Soul King to power. Although, as we know, this is certainly not accurate information. One version is that they created this division of worlds, and the Soul King did not resist but accepted it all. The military consists of the Gotei 13, along with the Onmitsukido and the Kido Corps, but first and foremost, the Gotei 13. Simply put, the Gotei 13 is the armed forces used to protect the Soul Society and ensure the balance of all 3 worlds. Then, from whose pockets are these armed forces paid for? Directly, as far as I understand. Again, Kubo doesn't talk about it anywhere. I could be wrong. Most likely, theoretically of course, it could look like this. If you remember that Soul Society reflects the Edo period in Japan, you could draw an analogy to this Japanese period, but that wouldn't be entirely accurate, and for good reason. For example, No matter how closed Japan was at the beginning of the Edo period, they still traded with some other countries. But if you look at the Soul Society, you get the feeling that they simply don't have a country to export to or to import products from. They are essentially locked in their feudal world where there is no one else. True, there is another Soul Society, as shown in Burn the Witch, but it was introduced fully later. It is not yet clear how they contact each other. And when you watch Bleach, you don't even realize that there is another Soul Society. So we can assume that the noble houses in their time somehow divided up the areas of Rukongai, not just Seirete and the noble area of Kizokugai, and that they are the largest landowners. And it's still unclear how many privileges they could have obtained for themselves during the formation of the Soul Society and the division of the three worlds. And so we can assume that Seirete, represented by Central 46, taxes Rukongai, some of which goes to Shinigami salaries, some to Mayuri's research, some to the Shinigami associations and clubs, and so on. It's unlikely all of this is covered by the great families and their vassals. GDP is likely to be generated through agriculture, livestock, textiles, ceramics, jewelry, construction, and so on. In favor of this, you can recall how, even in pretty much the worst neighborhood, specifically the 78th district of Inuzuri, close to the 80th, Rukia, Renji, and their friends, as kids, used to steal food from sacks and clay pots. In addition to this, we can remember the Gintombo eyewear shop, the Purgatory company that sells calendars, uniforms, and sports equipment, and the many drinking establishments where Shinigami go for a drink after work. Recently, Lisa Yadomaru has also set up a store with interesting reads. The Omaeda family owns a factory called Omaeda Gem Precious Metals Factory, where they make jewelry. Being wealthy, he was able to install heated floors, automatic doors, and a cooling and heating system in the barracks of the 2nd Division. Omaeda's company buys stones from the Wolfman clan. They're probably the only ones in contact with the Wolfman clan. There's also a shady businessman like Urahara, who trades with the Shinigami as well. Even after the exile, the Shiba family is also well established in the Soul Society, hardly just on selling fireworks, considering that Kukaku is even able to house freeloaders. First Ichigo and company when they infiltrated Seirete, and later Ginjo, Giriko, and Tsukishima on a permanent basis. You might also recall the short omake Byakuya's Gift, which was released for the celebration of New Year 2008. In this story, Ichigo receives a New Year's gift from Byakuya, a pass granting full access, adorned with a cherry blossom crest. It's an amazing document that allows him to take anything he wants for free from any store run by the Kuchiki family. Even Rukia was surprised and envious that Byakuya had given Ichigo such a valuable gift. Even in such a light-hearted story, Kubo notes that the Kuchiki family owns several shops in the Soul Society. Come on, we're getting off topic. In general, there are enough traders, producers, and products to have someone to tax, both to supply the armed forces and to line their own pockets directly. After all, Central 46 itself doesn't work for free. Surely each of the noble families also has their own companies and factories. It should also be taken into account that all aspects of Seirete are made up of reishi. Thus it turns out that all the banquets, upkeep, clubs, and research are paid for by the already impoverished people of Rukongai, and the rich just keep getting richer. This is the bottom line, but it is not certain, only speculation, since these are not the words of the real god of this world, Taito Kubo, but the words of a mere mortal. Well, let's stop here for today. What do you think about all this? Unfortunately, due to time constraints, I have only briefly touched on this topic. Maybe some of you can develop it more holistically and fully, at least in the comments. Would you like to get a job as a Shinigami? Or better yet, in a store with Lisa Yadomaru? Would you like a captain's salary, with all the perks of course? Goodbye everyone, and see you in the next video.